Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. A special vigil took place in Lethbridge Monday night, honoring the 4 Muslim victims who were killed in London, Ontario. In recognition of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, the province announces new funding to combat seniors abuse. And Israel has a new prime minister. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari discusses how the ousting of Benjamin Netanyahu will impact Israeli-Palestinian relations.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. A 42-year-old woman has died following an incident on the Oldman River Monday evening here in Lethbridge. Fire and EMS crews responded to a 911 call reporting a person had entered the water and went under near Popson Park. Naveen Day has more on the story. Nav?
Well, Hal, according to witnesses, the Lethbridge woman, whose name is not being released, floated away from her group and appeared to have trouble with the currents. Her friends tried to reach her but lost sight of her a short time later. One of them climbed the bank of a nearby coulee to obtain cell phone reception and called for help. Fire paramedics were able to recover the body, but resuscitation attempts were unsuccessful. Brendan Pine, who is the water rescue team lead for the fire department, says there are many hidden dangers in the Oldman River.
Just because the water seems like it's not very high, current is very deceptive. So be aware of the current. There's so many foot entanglements in this river, holes in the ground, there's rocks, there's tree stumps, there's weeds, there's barbed wire in the river. So just be careful when you're in there and be cognizant of what's under the water.
An autopsy for the woman has been ordered by the medical examiner's office. Back to you, Hal.
Thank you so much, Nav. That was video journalist Naveen Day reporting from the banks of the Oldman River in Lethbridge. Lethbridge City Council defeated a motion by a vote of 5-4 to consider repealing the temporary mandatory face covering bylaw 24 hours after the province enters Stage 3 of the Open for Summer plan. MIYASHIRO, Crowson, Carlson, Kaufman, and Mayor Chris Spearman were all opposed. We will have Mayor Chris Spearman's reaction on tomorrow evening's newscast. Lethbridge City Council voted unanimously on Tuesday to advance the Indigenous Place-Making Strategy a year ahead of its originally scheduled start to now begin work in 2021. Council had previously approved this strategy, which includes a review and audit of the public spaces, markers, and language used by the city as part of the 2022 through 2031 Capital Improvement Program. Since the discovery of the 215 children found at a Kamloops residential school, members of the community have been asking the city to change the names of these public spaces, including Indian Battle Park. The city manager will present City Council with the findings of the public spaces audit and recommendations for further action no later than February 28th of 2022. Just over a week ago, a Muslim family was hit and killed while out for an evening walk in London, Ontario. Following the hateful crime, communities across the country have gathered in solidarity to remember. As Carson Marsouk reports now, the Muslim Association of Lethbridge hosted a special vigil Monday night to honor the 4 members who were killed.
Community members gathered Monday evening to pay their respects to the Muslim family killed in Ontario. Organizers say the vigil has brought out people of all backgrounds to show their support to the Muslim community.
Our goal with this is to raise awareness of Islamophobia, that it does exist in the Canadian society, and that we all need to take our part and do our part and stand up against Islamophobia. In attendance was Mayor Chris Spearman, LPS Chief Shaheen Medizadeh, MP Rachel Harder, and many others. Members of the Muslim community have expressed their concerns and safety when going out into the community. The president of the Lethbridge Muslim Association says he has dealt with members directly who are afraid to go out.
My family, I have 3 girls and my wife, they all wear hijab, and they never been a subject of any discrimination or harassment or anything like that. But I do hear from my own community people that they are scared. They are afraid to go for a walk.
In response, LPS Chief Shaheen Medizadeh, along with 4 other constables, met last week to reassure the Muslim community that they are safe in Lethbridge.
I remember on Tuesday morning, we received a phone call from Lethbridge Police Department. Early in the morning, they reached out to us, offering their support, offering their condolences, and assuring us that we are safe here in Lethbridge.
Organizers say education will play a huge role in stopping these kinds of hate crimes.
It's going to take years and years to get this under control. So I think we should somehow start, as individuals, as politicians, leaders, we should start and the starting point and the most effective point will be education.
For Bridge City News, I'm Carson Marsouk.
In honor of World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, the province announced it is allocating $750,000 to the Alberta Elder Awareness Council to support elder abuse prevention and intervention initiatives. Alberta Seniors and Housing Minister Josephine Pon says $650,000 of the funding will help coordinated community responses increase support for seniors subject to abuse.
This is a critical issue for many seniors in Alberta, and we are committed to getting it right. Because elder abuse is not acceptable for anyone in any form. On this World Elder Abuse Awareness Day, we proudly unified with organizations and community across the province in this important work. Please know, Alberta's government will continue to work ensure seniors can stay safe, healthy, and connected to their communities.
Another candidate has entered the race vying for a spot on Lethbridge City Council. DARCY Logan has worked in Lethbridge for 20 years with various organizations, and he says now is the time to continue that service in a leadership capacity. Micah Quinn has the details.
DARCY Logan has 4 main platforms he'll be campaigning on. These include keeping a vibrant downtown space for Lethbridge by working to make sure that the city is a hub for retail and culture, keeping a strong and respectful workplace for City Council, and maintaining civic stewardship in the form of financial responsibility and consultation with stakeholders. But the main platform that he's campaigning on is Love Lethbridge.
And I think if we want to attract outside investment, tourism, people relocating and really making Lethbridge a destination, we need to focus on kind of championing all the amazing opportunities that we have here in our community first. We have world-class recreational facilities, we have amazing cultural opportunities, restaurants, retail that's unparalleled for a city our size. But I would advocate for forming a committee that will focus on raising some of that civic pride before working with partners that are selling Lethbridge to the rest of the world, like economic development and things like that.
The topic of people disparaging Lethbridge has come up quite a bit, and with this City Council bid, Logan says he'll be trying to reverse those opinions.
I think it's time for us as a community to come together and speak in one voice, because if we speak in one voice and advocate for loving Lethbridge, then I believe that a lot of these other people that might be thinking of relocating or investing in Lethbridge will listen. If we're kind of disparaging it or not paying attention to the things we have, then why would we expect that anybody else would?
For more information on Logan's platforms, you can visit loganloveslethbridge.ca. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
While new names are being put forward for a spot in Lethbridge City Council, there will also be some vacancies and seats to fill this fall during the municipal election. That's because 2 city councillors have decided not to run. Now, one of the city councillors who's stepping aside is Rob MIYASHIRO. He says that 2 terms as city councillor is enough. He says a lot of his focus moving forward is with his role as the executive director of the Lethbridge Senior Citizens Organization.
I believe my board and my staff have been pretty understanding, and they've been done a great job when I've had some split interests, you could say. I don't think even if I asked my board, they would have allowed me to run again. And I really didn't want to. I'm doing some really exciting things in the senior sector, locally, provincially, and nationally.
The annual Sapphire Benefit Dinner, put on by Streets Alive Mission, is receiving a bit of a twist. Due to the pandemic, the nonprofit group was not able to hold their biggest fundraising event like years past. Now the event is being called Sapphire Dinner in a Box. Jennifer Lepko, the Director of Fund Development at Streets Alive, says the funds will go toward the less fortunate in our community facing poverty.
Providing the food, some basic wellness checks, providing water or coffee when it's warm or cold, making sure that there's adequate clothing, underwear. We're always in need of underwear, socks, mittens in the winter, those types of things. It's directly to the services provided through the mission. So definitely supports those that are struggling, and we're seeing a lot more now with the pandemic as well.
Boxes can be ordered until June 30th through Streets Alive Mission. A Calgary pastor has been arrested a second time after his church, Fairview Baptist Church, gathered over the weekend for underground worship since their church was allegedly seized by Alberta Health Services. Joining me now from Calgary to discuss this in more detail is John Carpe, the president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms, a group which is fighting for Pastor Tim Stevens. John, authorities dropped charges against Pastor Tim last month after discovering that AHS never served him with a court order he was accused of having violated. Tell me about the new charges.
Well, Pastor Tim Stevens of Fairview Baptist Church in Calgary was arrested illegally a second time on Monday, June 14th. Normally, when people exercise their charter rights and freedoms in the face of unscientific and unconstitutional public health orders, the normal process is you get a ticket and you can plead not guilty, and you can take the government to court and force the government to produce medical and scientific evidence to try to justify its health orders. So Pastor Tim Stevens and many other people have been ticketed. The arrest and jailing is only allowed when there's a specific court injunction against a person or against a church. And in the case of Pastor Stevens, there is no court injunction against him or against Fairview Baptist Church.
If Pastor Stevens was illegally arrested not once but twice, as you have suggested, will he consider suing?
Well, I think it's very important to hold the government to account. When the government illegally arrests a person and puts them in jail, whether it's for 1 or 2 nights or whether it's 35 days in jail, like what Pastor James Coates spent, the fact is that's a very severe violation of your human rights to be illegally arrested and thrown in jail. And it's appropriate, not because you want to seek revenge, but simply as a means of accountability. Government should be held to account. And I certainly hope that Pastor Tim Stevens would commence civil proceedings against the Alberta government and the Calgary Police Service for illegal arrest and illegal detention.
Thank you so much, John. That was John Carpe, president of the Justice Centre for Constitutional Freedoms in Calgary, which is representing arrested pastor Tim Stevens. The former Minister of the Interior for Finland could face up to 6 years in prison for publicly staking a stand for her Christian beliefs. As we hear in this next story, the case has provoked an outcry from many law professors who say this is a major threat to religious freedom.
Law professors from several elite US universities have criticised the prosecution of a Finnish Christian politician accused of hate crimes. Finland's former Minister of the Interior, Parvi Räsänen, could face up to 6 years in prison for publicly supporting the Bible's teaching on marriage and sexuality, including sharing a Bible verse. An open letter signed by prominent professors called the Finnish Prosecution General's actions straightforward acts of oppression, stressing that the charges will compel Finland's clergy and lay religious believers to choose between prison and abandoning teachings of their various faiths. No reasonable balance of the goods of public order, civil equality, and religious liberty can ever support this suppression of the right to believe and express one's beliefs.
Closer to home, the City of Calgary has rescinded its local state of emergency that has been in place to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. It says the municipal emergency plan will remain activated to provide information, resources, and support. But it says the powers afforded under the state of local emergency are no longer necessary. The city has renewed the state of local emergency 3 times since it was first implemented in March of 2020. Officials with the Calgary Stampede say capacity will be cut in half to keep visitors safe if the event goes ahead as scheduled next month. They say enhanced COVID-19 protocols could include proof of vaccination or rapid testing to get into some venues, including the Nashville North live music tent. The rodeo and fair billed as the greatest outdoor show on earth is expected to return on July 9th and run for 10 days. Premier Jason Kenney said major events, including the Calgary Stampede, can resume if the province meets a target of 70% of the population receiving its first dose of the vaccine by early July. Federal opposition members blasted the Trudeau Liberals after 2 senior military officers golfed with former Defense Chief Jonathan Vance. Vance is under military police investigation for sexual misconduct allegations. Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan says one of the officers has stepped aside from his role immediately.
Not only Mr. Speaker, does this show zero respect for Operation Honor and zero respect for victims? It shows there's zero respect for this defense minister among the top brass. The minister has refused to stand up for victims and continues to cover up bad behavior of his buddies. When will the minister admit the top ranks of the military is fast becoming a shambles, and it's a direct result of this minister's failures?
The acting chief of defense staff has been reviewing this matter very closely, and it falls within his responsibility in the chain of command. The acting chief of defense has informed me that the vice chief of defense staff is no longer in his role effective immediately. And our government is working towards a complete institutional culture change in the Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces. Thank you.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says how to get more vaccines around the world is a complex question and not one that can be solved by a single silver bullet. The PM has yet to state Canada's position on whether intellectual property rights should be temporarily waived around COVID-19 vaccines.
As we continue the fight to end COVID-19 for good, we took a strong stance on major issues, including on access to vaccines, climate change, and global education. Yesterday, I took part in the NATO summit, along with our allies here in Brussels. The alliance is united and committed to continuing its important work on national and international security. We all agreed that we need to continue to adapt to new security challenges, including climate change and cyber threats. Our world is at a unique moment in history, and not only because of this pandemic. We must stand united. I'm encouraged by the collaboration I've seen between our friends and allies this week and during my meeting with the European Union. Our priorities are clear. Together, we must end this pandemic, rebuild our economies, and keep our people safe.
Prior to their upcoming meeting, U.S. President Joe Biden called Russian President Vladimir Putin a worthy adversary. He declined to say, however, what he hopes to gain from the summit.
The last thing anyone would do is negotiate in front of the world press as to how he's going to approach a critical meeting with another adversary and or someone who could be an adversary. It's the last thing I'm going to do. I have met with him. He's bright, he's tough, and I have found that he is as they say when he used to play ball, a worthy adversary. But the fact is that I will be happy to talk with you when it's over, not before, about what the discussion will entail.
After 12 years of being the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu has been ousted. A new coalition unseated the longtime Israeli leader. The new PM is Naftali Bennett, who was sworn in on Sunday. Our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari says Netanyahu, or Bibi as many refer to him, will be missed due to his strong leadership.
Bibi is a very, very tough leader, and that's wonderful with Israel having so many adversaries. He wasn't as flexible as Bennett and Lapid will be. He's not as inclusive in some cases. But at the same time, you have so many enemies, so many hostile states surrounding Israel, that someone like Bibi Netanyahu was able to keep the country for 12 years with minimal security breaches.
Lisa will discuss how the new leadership in Israel will impact the country's relationship with Palestinians. That interview is coming up in the second half of our newscast. Well, it was nice to have a bit of a break from the record hot temperatures today in southwestern Alberta, especially when you don't have air conditioning in your home. More seasonal temperatures should remain for the rest of the week. A full look at the weather picture is coming up. We had much more seasonal temperatures today across many parts of southwestern Alberta. Jeanette Rocher is back with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, no record temperatures set today, but still a beautiful day in the city.
Yeah, you're right, Hal. Still a beautiful day out there. A bit windy, though, and that wind could continue into tonight and tomorrow with 60-kilometer-per-hour gusts. And did you hear that thunderstorm last night? I sure did. It woke me up. We could get a little bit more of that tonight into tomorrow also. Actually, it's going to be clearing up by tomorrow. Mix of sun and cloud on Wednesday, 23 degrees. 26 on Thursday and Friday with lots of sunshine. 25 on a Saturday with a mix of sun and cloud, 23 on Sunday. Actually, Saturday night we could see those showers, but it'll clear up by Sunday. 25 on Monday with a mix of sun and cloud. So it should be a beautiful, beautiful week ahead of us. Certainly sitting higher than those average highs for this time of year. 22 degrees is the average high, average low 9 degrees for this time of year. 32 was our record back in 1961 and 1994. We had 2 degrees being our lowest. 5:23 is when the sun rose this morning and our sunset this evening. 9:41 p.m. giving us 16 hours and 18 minutes of daylight, 1 minute longer than it was yesterday as we creep closer to that summer solstice on a Sunday. 19 degrees on the coast tomorrow with lots of sunshine. 21 in Edmonton, Calgary, 20 degrees with lots of sunshine. Calgary could see those thunderstorms overnight tonight, but into tomorrow clearing up definitely. As we look to the rest of the prairies, a bit windy as we're looking at 50 and 60 kilometer per hour wind gusts. 25 the high in Saskatoon with a chance of rain. 26 should be a beautiful day in Regina, lots of sunshine. And look at that in Winnipeg, 32 degrees with lots of sunshine, also experiencing some humidity as well. As we look into the central part of the country, lovely temperatures and lots of sunshine for this area. 22 in Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, sitting at 23 tomorrow. Looking to the coast, we're going to look at Fredericton here. We could see a chance of some showers, 21 degrees the high. Halifax as well, Charlottetown 23, 18 degrees the high in St. John's, Newfoundland, as they are also keeping a watch on a tropical storm Bill, which is creeping up from North Carolina. It's about 300 kilometers south of Halifax now, but not expected to impact the Canadian coastline. But they are keeping a watch on that. So there you have it. That is your forecast.
Today's weather is brought to you by Jeff Reimer of Royal LePage South Country Real Estates, 403-380-1779.
The Canadian Real Estate Association says we should be seeing record housing sales for 2021. CREA says, however, sales cooled somewhat last month, down 7.4% from April, as declines occurred in close to 80% of all markets. A CREA spokesperson said slowing sales were due to a lack of supply and soaring prices during the pandemic. The group, however, is predicting sales will be up by almost 24% this year, and the average price increase will be just over 19% from last year. The organization does say that prices will level off and even drop by 13% in the year 2022. The U.S. and European Union have reached a deal to end a damaging dispute over subsidies to rival plane makers Boeing and Airbus. A U.S. trade representative says the two sides have come to terms on a 5-year agreement to suspend billions of dollars in punitive tariffs at the center of the dispute. The breakthrough, however, leaves other trade frictions between the two unresolved. They include import tariffs imposed on European steel and aluminum 3 years ago by former President Donald Trump, which are being left in place by current President Joe Biden. Ford's revived Bronco SUV is rolling off the assembly line at a Michigan manufacturing facility and heading out towards dealerships across North America.
The Bronco is being built here at Michigan Assembly Plant, and this is the home of Bronco, and this is where we've built all Broncos through the history. So this is the 6th generation. And we're sending them down the line right now, and shipping them to customers. We've got 125,000 customers that have already ordered the Bronco.
You have a lot of legacy employees here who actually built the old model Bronco before it was phased out, and their parents built it before them, and so you have generations of Bronco builders still on site, right?
Oh, it's an iconic brand that Ford has just nurtured over the years, and we're just so happy to have it back here at Michigan Assembly.
That is one good-looking SUV. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 73 points to 20,231. The Dow was down 94 points to 34,299. The S&P 500 was down 8 points to 4247, and the Nasdaq was down 101 points to 14,073. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up $1.59 to $72.47 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 13 cents to $3.23 US. Gold was down 6 cents to $18.58.96 US an ounce, and silver was even at $27.66 US an ounce. Wheat is at $340 per metric ton, barley's at $344, canola's at $7.24, and corn is at $405 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $1.85 to $121.23. Feeder cattle were up $2.23 to $156.83. And lean hogs were up 28 cents to $118.50. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 82.09 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, a 42-year-old woman is dead following an incident Monday night on the Oldman River in Lethbridge. Police say the woman was swimming with friends when she went under at Popson Park. Fire paramedics entered the river near the Paradise Canyon Golf Course to recover the victim, and attempts to revive her were unsuccessful. An autopsy has been ordered by the medical examiner's office. Benjamin Netanyahu is out as Israeli Prime Minister. The new man at the helm is Naftali Bennett. Coming up, our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari will discuss how that change in leadership will impact the relationship between Israel and the Palestinians. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is out after 12 years as new Israeli government survives a confidence vote. To discuss this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert Lisa Daftari, joining me once again from Los Angeles. Lisa, what do we know about Netanyahu's successors, Naftali Bennett and Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, on forming the new coalition after the alliance of their parties ousted Netanyahu?
Well, for some, the good news is it's not Bibi, and for others, the bad news is that it's not Bibi. That's what I can say about this government. There's so many parallels that can be drawn here between the Trump era in the United States and the Bibi era for Israel. Bibi is a very, very tough leader, and that's wonderful with Israel having so many adversaries. He wasn't as flexible as Bennett and Lapid will be. He's not as inclusive in some cases. But at the same time, you have so many enemies, so many hostile states surrounding Israel that someone like Bibi Netanyahu was able to keep the country for 12 years with minimal security breaches. I know we just got over a war with Israel. We had another one in Israel in 2014. So it seems like it's been one after the other. But you also have to look at Israel's history of giving away land like they did with the Gaza Strip and getting more violence in return. So you have to understand Bibi's mindset or outlook was, well, let's build settlements because that land is ours, right? And why are we giving our enemies a foothold or, a landing strip in order to, start firing back at us and have a closer range? So he had a very different outlook. This Bennett and Lapid coalition, how did it even happen? They wanted to go forward. They wanted to move past this gridlock that was happening with Bibi Netanyahu, and they looked to the future and said, we want to be more inclusive. Well, they're including Arab members of parliaments, of the Knesset in their coalition. It's definitely going to be more inclusive, so much for those people who claim that Israel's an apartheid state, right? It's always had Arab and Muslim members of parliament, but now they are going to have a louder voice. They're going to have a bigger platform. There's, again, people cheering on the streets of Israel, and there's people who are protesting this. They're very upset about Bibi being out, and really we're very much proud of the work and the strength that Bibi has shown as leader of Israel for 12 years.
Many world leaders, including our own Prime Minister here in Canada, Justin Trudeau, and your President Joe Biden, congratulated the new Israeli government, for obvious reasons. But what will this really mean, Lisa, for relations with the Palestinians?
Yeah, great question, Hal, because, one of the things that people were looking to see is how quickly these calls would be made to the new government. Why? Because there was such a delay here in the United States, for example. It was deafening, right? The fact that Joe Biden came into office and it took him, I think, more than 3 weeks to call Bibi Netanyahu. So the immediate call to this new government perhaps is showing some sort of daylight between Bibi and this new government to say that, it was a personal issue that his predecessor, President Obama, and now Joe Biden had with Bibi, and that they would work together more closely with this new government. And what will it mean for the Palestinians? Well, we have yet to see. Look, in a lot of instances, new governments come in roaring, right? Just like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris did. They came in roaring about the southern border, and what happened? At the end of the day, they go down and they see the facts, they see the logistics on the ground and say, do not come. The same thing that President Trump was saying. The same thing here. Well, perhaps we have a softer face of the Israeli government, softer than Bibi Netanyahu's. But when push comes to shove, will they let Hamas rain these rockets down into civilian areas in Israel? No, not at all. It's going to take a lot. We have seen all sorts of leadership in Israel, from the extremely liberal to the extremely hawkish, like Bibi Netanyahu. We saw Yitzhak Rabin shake Yasser Arafat's hand on the White House lawn on Bill Clinton's watch, and we saw nothing come of it. There was no peace. It was just a handshake, a photo op, nothing more than that. What will come of a more lenient government? Well, we'll have to see if the Palestinians are ready to make a shift, if they're ready to oust Hamas, if they're ready to really look at peace as a viable option for their future.
Hamas, meanwhile, announced that its new prime minister assumed office in the Gaza. Lisa, what do we know about this individual?
Yeah, more of the same. Look, this is similar to the election that we're having in Iran. Who's going to become prime minister? The leader of Hamas, someone who's from Hamas. Hamas is a terror organization. They are trying, lipstick on a pig. You cannot make this into a legitimate leading body, a government that will, make a change for the people of that region. We've said many times, yes, Free Palestine is a correct hashtag, but it should be Free Palestine from Hamas and no one else. That is the the leadership that is suffocating its people. Their people are not allowed to speak out, where women are not allowed to freely go out onto the streets, where the textbooks for young people talk about killing Jews instead of teaching them arithmetic. So, it's going to take a big change to see, significant progress in Gaza.
U.S. President Joe Biden and his Turkish counterpart Erdogan have known each other for a number of years now, Lisa, but their recent meeting was their first as heads of state. It comes at a tense moment for relations between the two countries.
Yes, well, we've called Turkey a frenemy for many, many years now because they have gone more and more rogue as the years have gone on. Even under President Obama and then Trump and now Biden, we have seen, Turkey kind of skirt away from the Western Hemisphere and go towards the Eastern Hemisphere, meaning they align themselves more with rogue states rather than the Western ones that require them to have, some sort of ally friendship and to decorum and to be a NATO state. And if we're allowing them into these bodies, then they should behave in a way that's suitable for the West and our interests in that area. You look at what Turkey's involvement was in Syria, for example, in killing the Kurds. That was something that was not in alignment with the U.S. interest. Or looking at a lot of the involvement that they have with Qatar, another terror funding state, or the Iranian regime, or their dealings with Russia in Syria, again on the ground. So there's a lot of proverbial slaps on the wrist that need to be delivered from the White House to Turkey, but it seems like that is not the way that Erdogan is going these days.
Diplomats outside of the European Union have cautioned that negotiations with Iran to salvage a landmark nuclear deal, Lisa, still needs more time. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Hal. It's like this juxtaposition between, these Western allies speeding forward at the negotiating table with Iran's regime, and on the other hand, all of this evidence coming out warning these statesmen from signing a deal with the Iranian regime that would probably be meaningless. Why? Because they are continuing with the enrichment of uranium. They have stopped with the surveillance of their sites. They have not been cooperating, and more than that, they've put more money into terror and they've gone forward with their weapons program, and they have been hush-hush about all of this. Does not look like they're looking to be cooperative. It doesn't look like they're looking to be signatory to another deal. So there are warnings, but there's also this eagerness to get back into a nuclear deal with Iran. And we know the White House, the news just broke a few hours ago that the White House had secretly taken some of the sanctions off of the Iranian regime, those sanctions that pertain to Syria, without telling Congress. Now, is this going to become a habit of not telling Congress, going forward and not really consulting? We know there's a lot of voices in Congress, in Senate, coming from both sides, warning against getting back into an Iran nuclear deal, but who's listening?
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was just at the G7 summit, Lisa, saying that we should really be aware of the issues involving both Russia and China. And of course, your President Biden, meanwhile, urged the G7 leaders to call out and compete with China. Competing with China as in maybe bring more manufacturing back to North America?
That would be wonderful, right? More manufacturing, more jobs. I mean, we gave it to them on a silver platter, and now it's time to collect. This was Donald Trump's entire platform, even before he became president, that it's just not fair what the Chinese are doing to us. And obviously, we got involved in a tariffs war with China. Nothing was solved. And now here we are again in a worse position because China is mightier. They have a more beefed up military. They have more security surveillance. They have reached their tentacles in the region, and they have a more ironclad rule back at home. So we're not in a better position to tell China what's up, but at the same time, there's more awareness now. So you have, Canada and the United States and the allies telling China and Russia, for that matter, that they better behave themselves. But when they're that big and that strong, I mean, it's going to be very difficult to curb China's behavior.
Now, the group of 7 leaders ended their summit by demanding that Russia take action and investigate the use of chemical weapons within its territory and hold accountable those behind the recent ransomware attacks, along with other cyber crimes, Lisa.
Yeah, so these were the 2 transgressions that they wanted to talk to the Russians about. That was the use of chemical weapons, as you said. And of course, what affected us here in North America is these massive, massive cyber attacks on the oil pipeline here in the United States and the meat factory that I know was affected you guys in Canada, I think locally as well.
JBS Foods, you're right. Absolutely.
JBS Foods, correct.
Yeah.
That, shut them down. It's a reminder as to the strength that these, cyber heavy nations have. It's China, Iran, Russia that have put their money and resources into their cyber militaries that are on the offense, not on the defense, the way we are here in North America. But it's a reminder, these are soft targets, meaning we have to firm them up. We have to look at all of our infrastructures that are online. That's everything, right? Our banking, Wall Street, hospitals, our government. All of these infrastructures that are online need to be firmed up because these are soft targets. Now, to ask Russia or to ask China, please do not launch these attacks. It's a start. It's a symbolic start. But you know what? It's up to us to firm up these targets and to not be vulnerable and to become victims to these types of attacks in the future.
U.S. President Biden is meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Geneva this week, and it marks the latest chapter in a very adversarial relationship, to say the least. Now, Lisa, Biden has been quite blunt about Putin in the past, saying he has no soul, and even called Putin a killer in a news interview earlier this year. How can these two actually work together?
Yeah, way to warm up ties before you sit down with somebody, right? So, yes, they're definitely involved in a war of words, exchanging these types of I guess,
barbs,
bad words,
shots, yeah.
Yeah, shots back and forth with one another. It comes down to the U.S. and Russia having to have some sort of semblance of a relationship. But, the current White House is very wishy-washy, and it's a very dangerous way to be in terms of foreign policy. If you're going to have this attitude of appeasement, then you need to go forward, kind of with the carrot and stick, right? You have to be softer and speak a certain way and sit down and have diplomacy. But if you're going to make ultimatums, you don't then sit down for appeasement. And I feel like that's what we're doing in many of these cases. If you look at Afghanistan, or if you look at Syria, if you look at the Iran nuclear deal, if you look at Turkey, if you look at Russia, China, and the list goes on, that's the way that they've been handling these crises around the world. That's not the way you sit down with a rogue dictator or rogue ruler like Putin, like Erdogan, like the Iranian regime. They're not going to respond to this kind of cat and mouse. You're not going to use these kinds of words and then want to sit down. We're out of a treaty with them. That was one thing that the left criticized Donald Trump for exiting the treaty with Russia. Now we are out of a treaty again with them. It's tense, right? But you have to have a backbone if you're going to stand up to our adversaries. And that's especially with regards to foreign policy, what is necessary to have a place in world order, to have a place on the world stage, to have a seat at the table in terms of these big foreign policy issues. And of course, Russia, China, North Korea, the Iranian regime, all being priorities right now. You can add Venezuela to the list because it's right at our footstep, and the Iranian regime has its claws there as well. So we want to keep our eyes on these hotspots. And every time President Biden sits down with one of these individuals, it's an opportunity, but it's also a risk.
Russia's defense ministry is reported to have over 2,000 missile troops gathered in eastern Siberia to practice maneuvers with road mobile intercontinental ballistic missiles. Should we be concerned?
Absolutely. If you take a look at these missiles, I mean, these are like mama missiles. It's like they have multiple warheads that can deliver, I think it's 200 kilotons each. If you multiply that out, it's not fun. But again, forget about the details. You have to look at the agenda here. All of our adversaries are beefing up their military presence. They're beefing up their military capability. What is this telling us? It's telling us that they sense weakness. When they sense weakness, that's when they believe that they can start flexing their muscles. Not only are they beefing up their capabilities, they're making announcements about them. North Korea did the same thing a couple of weeks ago. We're seeing the Iranian regime do the same thing in the seas surrounding the Middle East. We're seeing the same thing coming now from Russia. So, sensing weakness coming out of the White House is not a good thing for our foreign policy. It's not a good thing for the free world. And it's something that we should all take seriously here in North America.
Our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining us once again from Los Angeles. Thank you, Lisa.
My pleasure.
Well, now that the weather has warmed up, we're seeing motorcycles on our roads once again, and we probably all need a reminder to drive cautiously, watch out for those bikers. Joining us to talk about motorcycle safety and awareness is Chris PLUMB, who is a spokesperson for Bikers Building Bridges right here in Lethbridge. Chris, welcome to the show. So great to have you on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Now, first of all, can you tell us a bit about Bikers Building Bridges? What is it and what does your organization do?
Bikers Building Bridges is a nonprofit. We're a registered nonprofit in Lethbridge. We work primarily with youth at risk. So we do needle cleanup, special events that are all free for the community. We did the trunk or treat last Halloween at the exhibition, had about 800 cars come through full of kids, and they got tons and tons of candy. It was all COVID friendly, and that was free to the kids. We also had a drive through with Santa so they could get their pictures taken during, these times where it just wasn't really accessible to go to a mall and get that done. And then we have a mentor program that runs out at Canadian Mixed Martial Arts when the gyms are open, of course. And we had 5 kids go through last year, the year before, sorry, and they just learned some jiu-jitsu and kickboxing and meet other friends there. And you gain that, self-discipline to learn a new thing and the confidence to take on the world, basically, and realize that, it's not always how it is in school where kids can, be mean and have bad words towards you. And you meet the right kids and get the right environment going.
I love that. So your organization is all about building those bridges with the community. I know before the interview we were talking about the name of your organization, Bikers Building Bridges, and how you guys came up with that name.
Yeah, and it's basically our way to kind of get rid of the stigma on bikers. A lot of people don't see, a group of bikers riding around and think, oh, they must be doing some charity work or, helping somebody. They think they're maybe out for a ride or, just out doing their thing. So our name, we kind of want to bridge the community between the nonprofits and the different charities and groups to help everybody get connected with the resources they need and, to do as much good as we can.
That's awesome. Now, do you have any upcoming events that we should know about?
We have some that we're trying to plan. With COVID, we're not putting anything really into, a concrete state just because things change so quickly.
It's so hard to plan anything these days, isn't it?
It is. We're going to do our trunk or treat and our drive through with Santa towards the end of the year again as well. We have space reserved for that at the exhibition parking lot as well. Last year we had about 20 trunks for our Halloween. We're hoping to double that, so even more candy for more kids.
Yeah.
And we're looking at a couple of summer projects, hopefully to go through if COVID restrictions get moved. We have our annual superhero ride for Kelly, which goes out to the Children's Hospital every year. And then we have our mentor program that we're actually going to increase as soon as the gym opens to take on about 30 kids rather than the 5.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, fingers crossed that everything works out for this summer and planning and everything. So for any viewers who wonder what it is that makes people want to ride a motorcycle, or for anyone thinking about buying a bike, tell us why you love to ride, Chris.
I just like the freedom. You can get on it and, go anywhere you want. You see sights you never would have thought of going to in a car or a truck. Sometimes you just get on and go to random spots for no reason whatsoever, but to get out and have fun and feel the wind in your face and relax and, leave the cares of work or any problems you're having somewhere else.
I like that. I bet you end up finding little communities and things that you normally wouldn't see, and so it's kind of cool in that way.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely find out where the good burgers are.
Oh, absolutely. Now, statistics tell us that driving a motorcycle is more dangerous, of course, than driving a car or truck. So almost 2/3 of collisions involving a motorcycle result in injury or death. So what's the main issue? Is it that motorcycles are much less visible than other vehicles?
Well, motorcycles, they definitely are less visible. It depends on the type of the bike. When you get some of like the Harleys and the Roadsters, they're fairly loud, so you definitely know they're coming. A lot of it, it's due to people being distracted behind the wheel on their phone. I can't tell you how many times I've come up beside somebody and they're texting or talking on their phone and don't even realize that you're there. And there could be a group of 5 or 6 of you right beside them, and kind of startles them when they realize you're there. And speed sometimes and driving beyond your ability is a major factor in some of those accidents as well.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Now, what should drivers be on the lookout for? Should they be double checking blind spots or looking twice? A lot of times we're not thinking about those motorbikes, are we?
Yeah, definitely shoulder checking. I find a lot of people don't end up shoulder checking, and they don't see you. You're sometimes farther over in the lane, so accidents do happen. One good thing to do is if you're driving with kids, you teach them to count the motorbikes that they see, and call them out, and that's going to transition them later on when they're adults to automatically identify that there are the smaller vehicles on the road.
That's a great idea. Instead of I Spy, it's like count the motorcycles, and then that way it helps the driver for sure
Exactly.
stay more alert, and then the kids are feeling like they're contributing, and it gets them off of the screen time too, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little more interaction, and there's plenty of different games you can do with it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Now, when it comes to passing a motorcycle, is there a right way and a wrong way to do this?
You definitely want to make sure you give that cyclist, some room. You don't want to crowd into the lane, or you tend to go where you're looking. So if you're looking at the guy on the motorbike, you may start veering towards him, and that can both scare the rider and the person driving real quick. And if that's taking your eyes off the street, something could happen in front of you, and then you're going to react by trying to go into a different lane, and that's no good for anybody in that situation.
No, exactly. Now, you had mentioned before that you might be going a little too fast. So, and this is interesting because sometimes we forget that motorcycles have faster acceleration, and also they slow down a lot quicker, right?
They do, depending on the rider's ability.
Okay.
Definitely one of the major tips I have for anybody is don't drive outside your ability. If you're a new rider the first couple of years, you want to definitely stay with that speed limit and give yourself extra time anytime you're going anywhere. Maybe not ride with somebody on the back right away, because that can change the situation quite a bit as well. And just, ride like everybody's out to get you, and you'll notice what's around you.
Yeah. So what's your advice for bikers to stay safe? Is it to wear highly visible reflective gear, for example?
They can. It does work. Usually it really depends on your driving ability. If you're going way too fast for the situation or the conditions, then you're going to cause more problems on your own than you want. But my number one tip for anybody on a motorbike is, again, ride like everybody's out to get you, and be aware of your surroundings, be aware of the conditions, dress for the ride, right? You don't want to be wearing shorts and a tank top because if you wipe out, that's going to hurt.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like we've all seen it. We've seen those bikers out there with shorts and tank tops and t-shirts. Is that unsafe? And you just answered the question.
Yeah, most definitely. You always see bikers in leather. It's really it's not really for the look. It's more for the safety. That leather is
Yeah.
going to protect you when you're sliding on the road.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. Now, what about roads that have sand and gravel on them, or bumpy roads or potholes? How do bikers navigate that?
It can get tricky sometimes. If you're in an area that you're not familiar with, sometimes you can come up onto where a highway will end and it's gravel or it's construction. So that comes back down to being aware of your surroundings and driving for the conditions. If it's a road you're not familiar with 100%, you're not going to go racing down it or be looking at the scenery as much. You're going to be paying a little bit more attention to what's in front of you.
Yeah, that's got to be hard, especially when you hit those mountain roads and stuff and it's so beautiful all around you. But like any driver, right? Stay safe, focus on the road in front of you. What about driving at night? I would imagine that would likely present some more challenges.
It does. You're definitely less visible at night. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself even more room around other vehicles that are around you. Make sure that when you're coming up beside of a vehicle, you look at the driver and see that they're looking at you. If you can see their eyeballs, they can see you. So you know that they know you're there. If you do come up beside a car and that driver's distracted or doesn't see you, hasn't made eye contact you, it's usually a good idea to get out of that positioning and either be in front of the car if you're in a lane beside it or behind it, and just take your time and get to your destination safe.
Yeah, that's great advice. What about wet roads or foggy weather conditions?
That comes again to riding within your skill level. I've ridden in some rainstorms where visibility is very low. I've lowered my speed way down to accommodate for that. Having a good helmet that doesn't fog up, and definitely wearing the right equipment for the wet weather so you're not getting soaked to the bone, and having good tires that aren't worn out so you have a little bit more traction, staying out of the big puddles, and just driving for the conditions like you would in a car.
Right, basically common sense, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Now, there are electric motorcycles and scooters out there. And of course, one disadvantage is that they're not only hard to see, but they're also hard to hear. Any thoughts on this?
I actually haven't come across any electric motorbikes quite yet. The scooters, I find usually there are a lot of younger kids on them who may not have the experience. So they definitely want to stay in the center of that lane when they're riding it and make sure they know everything that's going on around them. Don't be listening to headphones or have your phone mounted where you can see what's going on with that.
Right.
Just concentrate on the task at hand and getting where you're going.
That's really good advice, especially for those younger, more inexperienced riders or drivers. Definitely. Especially with that distraction with the screen. Absolutely. So what would you say to a viewer who would like to take up motorcycling? How do you get started? Who should you talk to?
You can talk to your local bike communities. They'll give you a lot of information. The reps at the stores will usually help you out. If it's your first bike, definitely take a course, rider safety course. They have them out here at the Lethbridge College. I know there's some in Calgary at the schools there and some private ones as well. That'll definitely help increase your awareness and increase your ability. And don't buy a bike that's too big for learning on.
Yeah. What kind of motorcycle should you start learning on?
A lot of people will go on a 750cc or an 1100cc bike. They're usually lighter, a little bit easier to control, a little bit lower to the ground. Once you get into the bigger bikes, you've got just more weight and more power, and it can be harder to learn on.
Yeah, makes sense. Now, bikers have traditionally been more of a guy thing, but are you seeing more women getting involved these days?
Yeah, for sure. I know in Lethbridge there's a couple of only women's groups that ride. In our group, our wives all ride with us, and they're currently learning how to ride their own motorcycles as well, so that they can, have that same freedom as well. I definitely encourage anybody to ride, no matter if you're male or female, or older or younger. It's It's a good skill to learn. It increases your, I think personally, it increases your ability while you're driving, because you're definitely more aware of what's going on to you when you're driving your regular car or a truck.
Interesting, absolutely. And then you hear of families that sometimes say that like a son, brothers, the dads, they all kind of take off on motorcycle trips together. I would imagine it's a good bonding experience.
Yeah, you definitely get close with the people you ride with. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Great
for those married couples, like you were saying with the wives.
It is. Yeah, I know my wife likes going on the back of my bike, and we'll just do random day trips and overnights once in a while to different places. And, you see things normally you would never see, and it's just nice and quiet. There's no distractions, and you have fun.
Awesome. That sounds like a whole lot of fun. I might have to take up a new hobby.
Yeah, it's a great hobby. It gets expensive. There's always some dad to your motorbike, but
absolutely,
it is a good hobby.
Thanks so much for your time today, Chris. We really appreciate you being on. Chris Plumb is a spokesperson for Bikers Building Bridges right here in Lethbridge. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.